Ethan, can you check if I'm live? And then make sure, are we live? Check, and then make sure the audio sounds fine. All right. Hello. How's everyone doing? I'm going to duplicate. Yep. All right, everyone scanned it? Everyone scanned it, logged in, and made sure that it went through? All right, thank you. All right. Just making sure. All right, today, as a lot of you might have seen, we'll be doing Pwn Tools, specifically on Python, okay? The reason I'm doing that is because I realize that I keep telling you guys to script, and I'm not giving you guys anything to work with. I'm just like script, like you guys are just going to magically figure it out one day. So I figured I'll give you guys a head start. And also, this generally speaking, we won't be doing any binary stuff because I know we talked about Pwn Tools with binary on Friday for the people that came on Friday. We're going to do Pwn Tools in the sense of scripting challenges where you have to like connect to a netcat instance and do stuff, right? And also we're going to talk about just Python in general so you get an understanding of how Python works and it's not scary anymore, okay? So hopefully all of you will get out of here with enough Python knowledge to just do whatever challenge you need to do and automate it pretty easily, okay? Hopefully. All right, so the IDE you use is completely up to you. I'm going to use VS Code because that's what I use. Also, if you guys want to do this through Ubuntu, you can, and I think you should because I don't think any of you have Python on Windows, or maybe you do. But if you want to boot up your Ubuntu VM right now, or whatever you use, Kali or whatever, do that. Kali doesn't have VS Code though, so if you do want to use VS Code, you can't do that. If you use a different IDE, you're obviously welcome to do that. If you use Notepad to code, you're welcome to do that. I use VS Code because I like VS Code. Is that big enough? Should I make it a little bigger? Hello, can you see me? Is that big? There you go. Is that good? All right, I'm going to take that as a yes. Okay, so once you go into Ubuntu, you guys can install Python, or it should have Python installed, but just to make sure, do sudo apt update, and then end sudo apt install Python 3. Just in case, you probably have it updated. If not, or you probably have it installed. What this will do is, if in case you do have it installed and you don't have it updated, you'll also update it. So, yes, but you don't have VS Code though. So if you do want to follow along on VS Code, which I won't be doing anything specific to VS Code, you can open up Nano and code as well. Yeah, so definitely I would recommend using Ubuntu just because you can download like Sublime Text or whatever IDE you usually use. I just use VS Code because I think it's very versatile and there's a lot of extensions and I can use whatever language I want on it and just switch through pretty easily. It's pretty cool. All right. Hopefully everyone have Python? Python 3 specifically? We're pretty much ditching Python 2s because most OSs pretty much got rid of pip installing for Python 2, and I'll tell you guys what that is in a little bit. But generally speaking, it's not continued anymore, and you want to stick to Python 3 because that's what's updated and that's what they're gonna have new packages for. Okay. So go on your Ubuntu VM and type this command in to make sure it's updated, and then if you want to use VS Code or you usually use it like outside of your VM and you want to install it on Ubuntu, the command is going to be sudo snap install code. And obviously you have to enter your sudo password. We know that much about this deep in the semester, I feel like, that I don't have to explain that, right guys? The sudo stuff. You guys know what sudo does. What's Linux? So sudo snap install code if you want to install VS Code. For the rest, I think, I really don't know. I think Sublime is just called Subl, S-U-B-L. But you can prove me wrong. Just go in there. You don't have to type it in the terminal either. You can open up the Snap store. They have a little like Microsoft store on Ubuntu on the left side. Kind of like Microsoft store. It's called the Snap store. You go in there and just search whatever you want to search and download whatever you want to do. You can also just use Nano. So let me do git bash. Do I not have git bash installed? Oh, I don't. All right, whatever. Nanos, you guys used Nano before. You can just open up Nano in the terminal and code in there if you want. But that's...
We get an error when we use sudo snap install code.
Dash classic, yeah, do that then. It tells you how to fix it. You might need to do it like that. Is this not big enough? That's too big. Dash classic? I'm not sure. It just depends on.
Snap installs things in like a sandbox kind of way, and classic just means it can access everything. Pretty much.
Yeah. I very rarely use Snap. That's why I have no clue how it works.
I've only encountered it like whenever I've had to, and that's annoying. So I look.
Yeah. So at this point, you probably have Python. You have an IDE of your choice running. Yes? Everyone has an IDE where you can write some code? Anyone doesn't have an IDE where they can write some code? Raise your hand now. Jason, you got an IDE ready with Python? How about you, Brandon? All good, Merrick? You look like you're going up and forward. Yeah, there you go. What about you, Jonah? Where's Jonah? I swear I saw Jonah. Okay, there you go. You're hiding right next to Andrew. John, you good? Yeah. I want to call someone out that says they're not ready besides Merrick. Riley. Ready? Dang it. Abir. How are you? Open up your Ubuntu. Open up an IDE of your choice. If you want to do it in Nano or Vim, you can do that as well. We're going to be coding Python today. Okay? All right. Hopefully everyone's with me, right? Okay, cool. To VS Code, to install VS Code?
No, I'm installing
Python? Snap? You're installing Snap on Kali? No. Oh. You should have Snap already. Did you run this command? Oh, that's installing VS Code. Yeah, that's installing VS Code. Yeah. Okay, you're good. Okay. So, two people that are not ready. Merrick, you ready now? Ethan, you good? You got your IDE? With Python? Somewhere. As long as you have Python with it. You have Python installed? Okay, cool. I think I saw Ishana as well. Is Ishana here? You got it ready? Okay, cool. All right, I'm starting. Is that cool with everybody? I'll go pretty slow. It's code. I know, it's scary. Coding is hard. All right. Just let me know if I need to zoom in or anything, because I can't really tell. Here, let's hide this. And I'll hide this as well. All right. So hopefully everyone has a file, and you're going to call it practice.py. You want to have the .py extension because we're using Python, okay? It's not necessary. It's necessary if you're in an IDE to just so you can click the run button and it knows what to run. But if you're just running the way we're going to be running it today, it's not really necessary. This is good practice. Just put the .py on there because it's the Python script, okay? We're going to be doing very simple Python stuff at first, and then you'll realize it's literally just like every other language, just easier. And then we're going to move on to a little bit harder stuff. Well, not necessarily harder stuff, just a little bit, tiny bit more complicated. Like I'm going to show you like syntax for for loops and while loops, and it'll be very simple because you already know how to do that. It's even easier than the syntax that you already know how to do. And then we're going to get into Pwn Tools, okay? Very simple build-up, very easy, okay? So, who knows how to create a variable in Python? Do we need to define a type? No type. So in Java, you have to do like int x equals, what is this? Int x equals like 3, right? In Python, you don't need to do that. I can create a variable, it doesn't matter what it is, and then if I do 3, now it's an int. It just knows that. I don't have to say that it is, okay? If I was to do 3.0, now it's a float. I don't have to say that it is, it knows because there's a decimal, oh shoot, it died. What is this? Okay. I don't have to say that it is because it sees a decimal. It knows that this is a float. Float meaning that's a decimal point, okay? If I was to create a different variable called y, and if I put something in quotes, Let's put EJ. This is a string. Oops. This is a string, okay? I don't have to say that it is. And also you might notice that it's double quotes. Python doesn't differentiate between double quotes and single quotes like other languages, because I know in C, single quotes means it's a literal letter, like one letter, one character, like E. But in Python, it doesn't matter. As long as there's quotes around something and they match, it is a string, okay? Very simple, very straightforward. Let's just do Z equals 3. So we have our 3 types, and I closed my file, oops. And I closed VS Code. All right. So this is, there you go. This is int, oat log, stream log. This is what? String and float. Cool. Now you guys know how to do variables in Python. It is as easy as that. Just say what it is. That is Python, okay? You don't have to define a variable. You don't have to worry about pointers. You don't have to worry about all that extra headache that other languages give you. You can just say that something is something, and it will just accept it. Very accepting language, very open-minded. All right, cool, delete these. All right, what's the next step? What's the next step? What's the next thing you learn in programming usually after variables? Writing a function, a little bit too complicated. What? While loop, that's the one after. I would say printing stuff. We should know how to print stuff. With Java, who knows? I'm assuming everyone here did Java because you guys are probably in cybersecurity. Yeah. So it's system.out.println. That's really complicated. Let's just type print. Let's just type print. Why would I have to type 4 different words to just put something on my screen, okay? So I realized that we didn't run the code yet because the time before we didn't have to run. Wherever you can open up a terminal in the same directory where your file exists. So if I type ls here, you see I have this is PowerShell, but it's fine. I have a file called practice.py. You guys see that in a terminal? VS Code lets me open up a terminal inside my IDE. But if you're on Linux, just open up the terminal where your file exists, okay? And this is how you run code in Python. You type Python 3, then the file name, and press enter. Or for me, it's just gonna be Python or without the 3, because it's the way Windows does it. But it'll be Python 3 for you guys on Linux, okay? You probably actually can get away with Python. Because of symlinks. We'll get symlinks eventually. But Python, and then the file name, and that's how you run it. And hopefully if you wrote your print statement correctly, you can type Python and the file name, and it'll print it out. Hello world, okay? Everyone with me? Mary, you look confused.
No, I'm just having fun. No, I'm fine with the Python stuff.
Okay. Okay. Let me know if you need help with that, because I don't want to leave people behind. It'll get a little bit more complicated later. All right, we know how to print. We know how to do variables. Now, how do we print variables? Sure, so let's create a variable name. I'm gonna call it Riley. Is that how you spell your name? Yeah. Okay, Riley equals, cool. Do we agree with that statement? Yes, we don't bully. All right, so now we're gonna print, and then I don't have to do %s, comma, or like in quotes, %s, like C with the Riley here, and with a pointer, where there's pointer. I can just say Riley. That is not Riley. Oh no. Vim keys are getting the best of me. All right, Riley. And now, if we did everything right, which we did, it'll print. Cool. Okay, very simple. It is as simple as it gets when it comes to programming, okay? But there's something we need to know about Python, is that Python is slow. As much as we want to believe that it's the best language, it is slow. But it is quick to write. So if you just have something that just needs to be repeated a bunch of times, just write Python code if it's simple, okay? But if you have to run an entire application that is supposed to have 1 million functions and 1 million things that it needs to do, you should probably go like Java or C or something that can be compiled, okay? And the reason I'm saying compiled is because Python is not compiled. That means if I was to take this line right here, which exists at this point before print, okay? I was going to take this line right here, delete it, and put it right here, not there, there. Will this work? No. Because the code is going to go in order, okay? It's going to see the print statement first, and then it's going to try to print Riley, because there's nothing here. It's going to go from here to here, and then it's going to try to print Riley, and then it's going to say, I don't even know what Riley is. And then it's going to give you an error, because how Python does things is this thing called interpreted. It goes line by line in order, okay? Unlike things like C, where you can write your main function up top, or you can write it at the bottom, or you can write your code wherever you want, and you compile it, and it just knows where everything is. Python doesn't do that, so it'll just, and Java does that as well. Java is compiled as well. Python isn't like that. So if you define something after you use it, it won't work. So we defined Riley. We gave that function, or that variable, the string cool, after we tried to use it. So it's not going to work. So I'm just going to show you guys that real quick. So if I do Python practice, it's going to say name error, Riley is not defined. And that's because Riley didn't exist, even though it's right here. But for the code, it didn't exist unless I put it before. And now there's no more problems. Does that make sense? Yeah.
If you were to put that all in a function, would it interpret the function line by line?
Yes. So we'll get to functions in a second. We'll get to functions today, 100%. So you guys understand, I just want you guys to make sure, I want to make sure we know how to do functions, or sorry, variables. We know how to print, and we understand that if we want to use something, it has to exist in the lines prior, okay? In very simple code with no functions. We're going to get to functions later, okay? With simple code that has no functions, we're not using any functions right now, we're not defining any functions. Very simple, it has to go line by line, okay? And even in functions, it technically has to go line by line. But we'll see, I'll explain what that means, okay? No questions so far? Everyone's good? Following? All right, how do we do math? Okay, I want to add 4 plus 3. How do I do that? 4 plus 3. That's it. So now if I want to print math, what do I do? Print math. We can do that as well, but I want to store a variable. You generally want to store variables. Just you can do that is what I'm trying to show you. You can store a mathematical equation in a variable. It'll calculate it and store it for you, okay? And this is important because if you're doing an assignment or if you're working on something that is a bunch of math stuff, like first do addition, and then you want to use that addition in the multiplication. I'm just going to call it mult, and it's like 3 times addition. I can do that. It'll add them first because that existed before. It's going to do the addition, and now 7 is going to multiply 3. And if I print mult, it'll do the multiplication. Make sense? So you can do math inside of variables and store them, and you can go in order, again, line by line. All right? So now why does this matter to us as cybersecurity students, and why is this more valuable to us than Java? Because we can do a lot of cool stuff with this. So including, like all the CTF problems that we've done so far, you can do them in code, in Python. And this is useful because when you actually get a job as a security engineer, they're not going to tell you, here, write my Java software for me. They're going to tell you, hey, I have this problem. I have 3 employees that do this one thing, and it takes them 7 hours to do. I don't want employees to do it. I don't want to pay this guy to do it. It is too easy to do. Can you just write code that does it for us? Yes, we can do that. That's the whole point of security engineers. So people like Jay comes in and then rewrites the entire bash script system that they have, unnamed company, to Python, and then gets paid internship wage. Yeah, but yes, we are going to use Python to automate things mainly. Now you can use Python for proof of concept code. Let me, what's it called? Shameless plug real quick. So for example, this CVE 2020 24572 is a CVE in RASP AP, which is an access point for the Raspberry Pi. It's some software, and I wrote this code for it. Granted, it wasn't my code in the sense where someone else kind of wrote a shitty version, and I made it work. Even though I give them credit, you can see up here. But I made it so it's much more usable, okay? And then you can see you can actually write code that does exploitation for certain things, right? And you can develop proof of concepts. And this is important because when you are talking to an executive as a guy that works in a cybersecurity firm, right? And you're telling them, hey, you guys need to put more money into cybersecurity than you do right now, they're just not going to understand what you mean. So what you do is you pull out something like this that you can click one button and it shows them root on their screen. And then they're going to be like, oh shit, I need to give you guys more money because this is dangerous. Okay? That's what mainly the idea of proof of concepts is. Okay? So Python, very useful. You don't really need to understand what this code does just yet. We're going to get to that. All right. Let's keep going. I would say the next thing should be while loop. No, other types of things like lists, commonly known as arrays, right? How do we do lists? Anyone know?
Name, brackets, equals.
Yep. So instead of other languages where you do something like this and define how many is allowed in that array or slash list, here you can literally just do this. And this is a list now. You can put however many things you want in there. You can also mix it up. So you see these are ints. Now I can do a string. Now I can do a float. This is all okay. Okay? As long, because it's not an array, it's a list. And think of list as literally a list of groceries. You put groceries down, and you also want to get a drink, and then you also want to go and grab some, I don't know, some cheese. No, what am I saying? Besides groceries, car stuff, I don't know. You know what I mean? You're going shopping. You don't just put one specific thing, like shirts only. You can put other things, okay? And that's Python. It lets you do that. And this is useful because you might need different types of stuff in the list. So let's create a list with only ints for now. I'll make it a length of 10. And this is 10 because 0 through 9, okay? I know I didn't do it that way. And now we get into, when you have an array, what do you usually do? You loop over the array because that's what you usually do, okay? So which one do you guys want to start with, 4 or while? 4. Let's do 4. So everything else so far is easy, right? That's why I'm going pretty fast. Printing stuff and defining variables, super simple. No need of extra stuff, just literally the variable name and whatever. List, same thing, list, and then whatever you need in there. My variable is L. I should probably just call it like J is list. J is list. There you go. All right. So you see I said 4? All right, so how do you guys do 4 in C? You have to do like something like this and then create a variable in there. Yeah, let's not do that. Let's just do for I in J's list. That's it. Now it's going to loop through every single variable or value inside that list. So it's going to start with 1, and it uses indexing. You guys know what indexing is. That means it's going to start with the index 0. So in our case, it's 1, and that's the main reason why I didn't put 0 at the front. So a lot of people get mixed up. So it's going to start at 0. Which in our case is going to be 1, and then 1, 2, 3, etc. You guys know how to index. So for I in J's list, we're just going to do print I, so we see what that looks like, and let's run this code. And you'll see it's literally going to go through one at a time, and it's going to print that thing. Okay? Yes?
I have an expected indented block here.
Yeah, okay. So now we're going to talk about indentations, because in Python, unlike other languages, that matters. Because it's not compiled, or there's no brackets everywhere, it doesn't understand what's part of what, okay? So in our case, we have a for loop, okay? And this for loop does stuff to the variable I, right? That's the idea. You're looping over this array to do something to the values inside the array, correct? So for us to define that this print statement is part of this for loop, we actually have to press tab once. Anything that's why I use this extension on VS Code called Rainbow Indent, and you'll see it'll change the color with every indent. It's pretty cool. It helps me understand that, okay, this is part of, obviously on simpler ones it doesn't need that, but when it gets more complicated, it helps me understand my indentation. So if I do print I here, any code that I want to be part of the for loop has to be tabbed once, okay? So for I in J's list, I press tab once under it, obviously, and I put the print statement. And now that print statement belongs to that for loop, okay? And this is important when we talk about while loops. So if I do while true, which in this case means that you're going to do this forever, okay? And I'm going to do, what do we do? Print J is cool, okay? So now this print statement exists inside this while loop, okay? And we know that much. Why? It's indented once, okay? And I said this is important because if I have a while loop, okay, and it's especially an infinite one like while true, because the reason this is infinite is because true will always be true. So if I'm saying while true, it's just going to infinitely go, okay? But eventually you want to break it, okay? So if I do break here, and we run this, it should only run it once, okay? So it's going to do our for loop up top, which is going to print 1 through 9, and then 0. And then it's going to print J is cool once, and it's going to break the loop, okay? And then let's say we put our break statement 1 tab back, which it's going to give me an error. But assuming there's other things going on, it won't give you an error. And what will happen is you'll loop forever. And then you're going to be like, oh, that's broken, okay?
When I run the command, it just keeps printing hello world. It's not like printing the current thing that I have on this.
Yeah, are you saving? I have to do Control S to save your file. Keep doing Control S. Is anyone else having that problem? Brandon, you keeping up? You good? Dang, he's flexing on us now. Oh, my fault. We'll get to Pwn Tools. We'll get to Pwn Tools. All right, I just got to make sure you guys know how to. So while true, we can do while. So with while loops, it kind of works a little bit like other languages. You still have to define a variable. So I'll just do while x equals 0. And then while x is less than 20, so I should do it 20 times. Print J is cool. So if you do that 20 times. Oh yeah, so yeah, that's a problem. That's another problem where we need to do that. So make sure if you did that, if you want to kill it, just do Control C. If you want to kill that, and then do x plus 1. Or x plus equals 1. And what this means is x equals x plus 1. This is a cool way of saying that. You can't do x plus plus.
I was about to ask, yeah, why doesn't X plus plus work?
The people that made Python decided that's not how that works.
The in-depth way of saying it is that's not an atomic operation.
That's not an atomic operation.
The other way of saying it is that it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. I said it both ways. So the cool way to say to write it down is x plus equals 1. It means x equals x plus 1. It's x plus plus. It just adds 1 every time. You can do 2. You can do 3, etc. And you can replace this plus with literally anything like divide, times, etc. Okay?
Is this like what's similar to like the I plus plus or the I minus?
Yeah, that's literally what it is. With 1 at least. With other stuff, you're gonna need to, like if it's times, you want to put times there. Or if it's another number, like 3, it still works. Unlike x plus plus, only does 1. Yeah.
How would you modify the print statement to print both J is cool and X is 1 line?
So okay, let's do that. So what is x right now? Over here. What is x over here?
In the first iteration is 0.
It's 0. So what we can do is, this is where you'll face your first problem. You'll learn about what's it called? Appending, or I guess adding statements, concatenating statements together, right? So what your first thought to do is do J is cool plus X. You kill that first string, and then you add the plus X, correct? That makes sense. So let's do that, okay? I'm gonna go ahead and run this code, and then bam. As soon as we reach the print statement, it says, cannot concatenate string because it is not an int to string. Or sorry, can only concatenate string, not an integer to string. Because x in itself is an integer, you cannot just put them together, okay? And that makes sense because it is trying to do the addition operation. It can't concatenate, it is trying to put a string next to a string. And an integer, it thinks that you might want to do like a multiplication or addition or whatever you put there, right? So in this case, what we can do, there's two things to do. You can define it as a string like this, put the string little thing around it, and you'll see, it'll pretty much turn into a string at this point. So whatever it is, it's a string. That is one way. The other way, which I like to do better, because it keeps the little thing as it is, the variable as it is just put a comma. When you put a comma, it'll put a space, so the string, space, and then the value. And this is cool because, for example, if I'm doing like something like this, like with a semicolon or a colon rather, and I run this, you'll see j is equal 0, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. Make sense? So it does the comma. With the comma, it just adds a space, and I don't have to change it into a string or anything like that. It's pretty straightforward. Okay? So we know how to do for loops. We know how to do while loops, right? Just with a while loop, you either do it true, or you can do like a condition, like x is less than 20 or x is greater than 20. Or if you want it as an input, like as long as they don't input quit, if x doesn't equal quit, then keep this code running. Okay? What?
Unless it's a string, right? Essentially, for the print keyword, you don't really need
Parentheses? You need parentheses. Oh, with functions, with functions. So print is a function. That's why you need it. It's a function made by the Python people. Okay?
like while or for any of those.
Yeah. So we'll get to different things that will require functions. Actually, that was the next step. We're actually going to create our own function. So I'm going to highlight all of this, and I'm going to comment it. And the way I do that is control /. So highlight all of it, and then do control / on VS Code if you're doing that, and it'll comment it. Or if you just want to do it normally, let's put a hashtag before the code, and it'll comment it out. And then I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to create our first function, okay? Anyone know how to create a function in Python? Def? Yes, let's do if statements real quick. It's pretty easy. Very similar to all the other languages. So I'm going to do 3 here. So x equals 3. If x, and then just like for and while, we just do if, condition, and then under it tab, and then what we're going to do. If x is less than 3, then print less. And then if we want to do multiple conditions, we can do elif, which means else if x equals 3, or I guess greater than 3. We'll do the greater than. And then I'm going to do tab, print, more. And then finally, we have else, which doesn't take anything. It just means every other possibility, which is equals. It's either greater, less than, or equals, right? Those are the only options in life. So we do print equals. And now we have our if statement. So if we run this, it should say what? Equals. Because it's not less, it's not more, it's equals. Make sense? So if statements are very straightforward. Same with while loops. The only one that's a little weird, actually, I think I'll go back to for loops later, is for loops. But while loops, it's while, condition, then code under that condition. Make sure you tab once. And then if statements, if, condition, code under the condition. Multiple conditions, okay, we have elif, condition, code under condition. Unlike other languages, like I think Java requires an else statement. You can correct me if I'm wrong. What requires an else statement? I feel like something. Okay, I guess I'm wrong. It doesn't require an else statement, so you can just do an if, and you're good. If this is all you need, this is all you need to write. Make sense? One thing real quick to know. I'm gonna go back to our code up here. After this while loop is done, we can have code over here. So print done. So this code right here is not part of the while loop. Okay? So it won't print it 20 times like the other stuff. It'll happen as soon as the while loop is done. Make sense? So a big mistake I see a lot of people do is they're doing a loop and they want it to say done at the end. So their logic is, okay, I'm going to print this, I'm going to append, and then it's going to keep doing that. And if for some reason it's going to ignore the print, and then it's going to run. But the print is part of the while loop, so it's going to print done every time. You have to make sure you exit out of the while loop by literally just removing the tab. That's all it is.
So if you don't want to type like a break statement necessarily, you just indent like
Yeah. Yep. So an indent, or no, the break is, the reason this is breaking is because we're adding to x. So eventually it's going to get to 21. You see how it gets to 18? So if we added to, what we do is we do add 3, it becomes 21. And now x is no longer less than 20. So it's going to get rid of, it's done with that while loop. Because we have that condition set. If we had a different condition set, it would keep going. Does that make sense? Possibly. So that's one thing. And then I'll do the other thing so I don't forget with for loop. So we can for loop, we can do a for loop over a list like this, like we did before. Or you can just for loop over numbers. And the way you do that is range and then the number. So let's say 5. So now it's going to for loop over 5 numbers, which is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? So it should print just 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's 5 times. So if you want to do something 5 times, just use a for loop. Because you don't have to do what the other one, we're doing it 5 times as well. And that's 5 lines of code, 4 lines of code without the done. And this is 2 lines of code to do something 5 times. Make sense? It's keeping it as efficient as possible because it is interpreted. You don't want it going over 4 lines of code when it can only needs to go through 2 lines of code. Make sense? I can actually even show you guys a pretty cool thing right here. If I go over here, we can look at this live. Let me hide this. So if it runs, there you go, finally. So you'll see that I have this little thing, and then it goes down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, and then we're done. I just wanted to show you guys visually for the people that learn visually, okay? All right. For loops good? Everyone's good? Yep. If you're not good, let me know. Jacob, you good? All right, cool. While loops, everyone's good. Very easy stuff. It's very similar to every other language. So you're not like coming up with something new. You just have to translate whatever you already know to the much easier syntax of Python. Okay? All right, so now functions. So you guys said define, and define it cuts down to def, define. And then what now? The function name. So what are we going to call it, John? And then colon. And then now you want to make sure you're tabbed. Okay? Any code you want to write in this function, you want it to be in the function, again, tab. So let's do a while loop, or let's actually do a for loop for I in range. Let's do 10. Print John is cool. Okay? Just something very simple to combine both little things that we learned. And then after the for loop, we're going to do if, let's see. Let's create a variable actually. X equals 3. There you go. If x is greater than 3, I'm just combining everything that we talked about. Print John isn't cool. And then if elif x equals 3, or actually I'm just going to do else. Print John is cool. I'll do something else actually so it makes sense. We'll do Ethan is cool. Okay? And then what is one more thing? All right, that's good enough actually. We'll do that, and then we'll do print done at the end. And you can notice I'm leaving line in between, which is fine as long as I'm still tabbed. And then you'll also notice that in my for loop I had to do double tab, and that's because the for loop requires a tab of its own to be part of it. So in the define, in the function, we have to do 1 tab, and then any code in that function, for example, the for loop, requires a tab of its own. So now we have to do 2 tabs for the print statement. Make sense? Everyone following? So it's just about playing with your tabs, and this is where something like the extension rainbow tabs or rainbow indent or whatever it's called is really useful, because I can see like, okay, this is like a greenish color and this is yellow, so I know where I'm at. Okay, so I know that this print statement is part of the function and not the else or the if, and it's not part of the for, okay? And you'll notice every time I'm done with something like the for loop, I go back to the initial tab and I start coding again on that tab, okay? So just understand your indents, and you're pretty much set for Python. But now let's run this code. So what's going to happen if we run this code? Nothing. But we just wrote all this code. Why is it not working? Who did this? Well, why? Does anyone know why it's not running? We're not calling the function. So we created this function, but we never actually used it. So this is the part where we call it. So the function's name was called John. For you, it might be something else. I don't know. And now that I'm actually calling it, all this code will run in that order, okay? As soon as it hits this point. So if I, no, never mind. So let's run this. So you'll see now it's actually going to run, it's going to say John is cool 10 times, and then say Ethan is cool because x is less, or x equals 3. It's not greater than 3. And then it's going to print done at the end, and we're good to go, okay? And then mind you, if you have a function, you don't need to only have code that runs inside the function. So if I run print this isn't in the function, and run it, you'll see that I can run the code outside the function as well, okay? So you create functions obviously to use them elsewhere. Think about it like that, okay? Make sense how to do functions? Use all the other stuff? Everyone knows how to do it? Cool. I don't expect you to just know it all the way. I mean, I would say as long as you've done well in your classes so far, you've gone a C or above, you definitely know how to do this stuff, okay? We're not going to be doing any object-oriented garbage with Java or anything like that. Writing 6 different files to run one file. We're not going to be doing any of that. It's all going to be in one file, maybe a couple of functions, but nothing too complicated, okay? So this is the part where you said, like the way it runs. And I said, yes, if you have a function though, it doesn't necessarily run in the order, right? So let's discuss what that means. So I'm going to take, I'm going to delete all this. So let's do this so you can see. So this is the code that we have right now, okay? We have define, or we have a function called John. I'm not going to call it, okay? And generally speaking, you want to have a main function, right? Right? Make sense? Okay. So in the main function, I'm going to write some code like print, this is main. And then I'm going to print J. That's it. Okay, just cause. And at this point, I'm going to run my John function in my main function, but in a loop. Okay? So if I do for I in range, I'm just going to do it twice. I can run John, the function John, twice. So we're really going to get spammed right now. Okay? And the reason I'm saying that, I'm putting that there, is because I'm trying to show you that I could have main and I could have John and not run them yet. You'll see what I mean. So that's all I'm going to write for main. Okay? And then here I'm going to do print, this is outside of everything. Okay? So far we have John, which does the little spam stuff that we did earlier. We have main that says this is main. I'll remove the J part so it makes more sense for people watching later. And then we have for I in range 2, so we're going to run the function twice. And then I'll have the print that this is outside of everything. And then finally, I'm going to do main. Okay? So now we're going to run main. So now, if we do run this, what is the expected output? What do you guys think is going to happen? What code is going to run first? The print. The print is the first thing that's going to run. Even though we wrote all of this first, print is the first thing that's going to run. And then what? And then it's going to call main, which main does what? It does the print right here first. And then it calls John, which then goes back up here and does this stuff in order twice. And then we're done. Does that make sense? So just because we wrote these before, I have this print statement that does stuff first. And then this main function exists, it calls John. So John never got called, therefore the code never gets run. I could just never call John. I could just write this function, just never use it if I wanted to. But that is something to look out for. So I'll show you guys by placing a breakpoint here and a breakpoint here. And you'll notice that we'll hit this breakpoint first before we hit this breakpoint, because the code really is going to run these two first. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, so you see, we hit this breakpoint. Let me just do this. We hit this breakpoint first, which is way outside all this code that we wrote before. Then we keep going to main. And then from main, you see it jumps to the print statement, which it prints it. I'll show you guys. This is main. And then it goes to the for loop, which goes into John, which should do the entire John function. And then I'm just closing the terminal so you guys can see. And then it does John again once I click this. And it's done. So now it should find that there's nothing else in range, and the code is done. So hopefully there's two lists of John is cool, lots of John is cool. And then this is outside of everything, this is main. Make sense? So if you have functions, it doesn't necessarily mean that the function is going to run that very second you write the code. You can write it for later. Okay, that's the idea I was trying to get to. All right, so now a couple really important modules that you guys are going to be using a lot in cybersecurity, or just in general, or rather libraries, we're going to call them. Is it cool if I delete all of this? Or do you guys want to keep, should I just comment it? I'll just comment it. This is annoying. There you go. I'll comment this stuff out. I'll give you guys this file later. All right. Let's go down here. So the next thing we want to talk about is libraries. Now you know the very, very basics of Python. You could learn classes and how to do object-oriented stuff. That's really boring and lame. So let's just continue on scripting stuff and import a couple libraries that are useful. One is called OS. And what this does is it lets you run OS commands like echo or ls or cd, and not cd, that doesn't really make sense, but ls and pwd and stuff like that inside the command. So if I was to click on my actual terminal and type pwd, it tells me the exact directory where I'm at, okay? If I was to type ls, I can see that as well, okay? But I want to do that inside my code, so I import the library OS. This lets me interact with my system. So if I was to do os.system, which is a function that comes with OS, and you see the parentheses now. Actually, speaking of, sorry, you see the parentheses over here as well in main. When you're calling the functions, you use the parentheses. Functions have parentheses. So when we define them as well, you might have noticed define main with parentheses, and then you put the colon, any code in there, and then main gets called with parentheses as well. So here system is a function written by the people who wrote import, which I think are Python people, obviously. And I want to run pwd. And then on paper, this should just run pwd.
We're on Windows.
Yeah, oh, this is running CMD, right? In CMD, not PowerShell. Okay, that's fine. So we have to use dir. I have to use dir. If people on Windows use dir. If you're on Linux, use pwd. I don't know why I thought I was just going to run in PowerShell automatically. But yeah, so now doing that should do the dir command, which means ls kind of. Or it means not dir. Sorry, dir is ls. He's trolling us. I meant to do pwd, which shows you working directory. But it's fine. So you guys can put ls to see the same output for as us. So that is important because for challenges like side channel, we had to time how long it took for the command to run, right? And instead of importing a module, some like random obscure module library that Python has, we can just use the OS library to run the Linux command time, which I don't have here. I'm on PowerShell, but the Linux command time with a file after will tell you how long it took to execute that file, okay? And that was essential for us to solve side channel, or else we wouldn't have been able to do that. Well, we probably could have with Python, but it's a little bit more complicated. With time, it's really just time, and then like Python 3 practice.py, and then it'll tell you how long it took to execute that file. And that's useful for an attack like a time side channel attack, okay? So OS, you can use it inside of loops. You can use it anywhere. There's system, and then another one that's pretty important is popen. And what this lets you do is actually define that into a variable. System will just print everything into your standard out, like how we saw a second ago. It just printed it on my screen. With this, it'll actually just define it as a variable, and doing it actually won't print anything. But X actually is the command, or the output of the command, right? The process of the command.
Get the standard out, you do dot read.
Dot read. There you go. Yeah, I figured because last time it did. It gave me like some hex value. So you want to do dot read like that. I can't spell. There you go. I'll show you. Actually, let me just show you what we mean by that. So if we did Python 3 and I did go up, print X, and we run it, it'll give you the object and where it's located. That's not what we want. We want to read it, so it actually shows us the output. Okay, and that's what we did for time. Okay, so we can figure out how much time it took for each thing to run. Okay, 30 minutes. You guys understand OS? Python, mainly speaking? Okay, cool. There's one other library I wanted to look at before we start into Pwn Tools, and it's requests. But I think requests is actually more complicated than Pwn Tools, so we're going to go back into Pwn Tools. All right. Not me.
Okay.
We'll see. If it does, I'll just switch over to Kali. I'll just have to use stuff in Vim, which is annoying, but it is what it is. All right. So now we want to use Pwn Tools. Hopefully everyone here has been following along, and they generally know how to use Python. And Pwn Tools is much simpler than that, except we get to interact with things outside of this computer, okay? Because right now everything that we're doing runs locally, and we don't get to do anything with that, okay? With Pwn Tools, you can do a lot of things. You can do a bunch of binary exploitation for the people that sat through our very long, boring talk on Friday about binary. And we talked about P32 and P64, and you guys are like, what the hell are these guys talking about? Pwn Tools lets you do that, but we're not going to be doing that part of Pwn Tools today. We're going to be doing the cool part where you get to connect to Netcat instances and interact with the shell like you're actually there, or even SSH into stuff and like automate the SSH process. Like you can do all the bandit challenges using Pwn Tools, which is pretty cool. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. Except, I just remembered, Pwn Tools, why do I have so many spaces? Holy. Except Pwn Tools doesn't come natively with Python. So what you need to do is you need to install, if you're on Linux, you need to do sudo apt install python 3-pip. If you don't already have it, make sure you're doing sudo apt update first if you didn't do it earlier. Sudo apt install python 3-pip. What the pip is, think of pip like apt. It lets you install things, but specifically for Python. Just like apt lets you install things for your Linux system. And the reason we want to use pip is because we want to install Pwn Tools, okay? So sudo apt install python 3-pip should be pretty quick. Everyone got the command? Okay, I'm just going to click enter because it doesn't exist for me. Yeah?
What if you're running Visual Studio on Windows?
You should have it, as long as you installed Python correctly, because I use pip right here, and you see it should go through. So if I do pip install Pwn Tools, there's no space, nothing like that, pwn tools, and then press enter. I'm not going to press enter yet. I'm going to let you guys get the command. So pip install Pwn Tools. After you have that installed, you get to have Pwn Tools. Pwn Tools is really cool. I just installed it prior to this, so it's going to tell me that I already have everything. This is the command for the people. Tell me if you guys are having any errors.
Yes, I think I might have typed it in wrong.
Okay. PWNTOOLS. And it installs a bunch of stuff. It's not just a small package. It is huge. And it is very useful. You can pretty much get rid of all your other libraries with just Pwn Tools. Like, yeah.
How did you say I get it to work? My pip is not working on Windows.
Did you install Python 3? Like from the website?
No, from like within the IDE that I was using, there was like a plugin and a
Okay.
Python.
Sure. So you do need to install. So I actually had to do that today. So if you come over here or not. I'm just gonna open up my files. Hopefully, there's nothing too important. When you download it from here, I'll do Python 3 install. So in the Python download, if you just do download Python 10.3, 10.4, if you already have it, what will happen is it'll give you this screen right here, the modify screen. Oh, oops. The modify screen. You want to click on modify. If you don't have it, just click install. And while you're installing, make sure you're clicking pip, making sure you're installing pip, so you can install that. And then next, and then once you hit next, make sure, if you're on Windows, you should really pay attention. After you do pip, make sure it's checked. Next, and then click on add Python to environment variables. And actually, I needed to talk about environment variables earlier because some teacher was explaining something horribly and people understood that incorrectly. So after that, just click install. Pip install Pwn Tools, yep. And then add Python to environment variables so that it knows where pip is. And just hit install and it should be good to go. And then you might need to restart your IDE. I had to do that. And then I was good to go. So pip install Pwn Tools and you should be good to go. Tell me if that fixes it for you guys. And then just like OS, we have to import the library. So last time we did import OS. This time, what do we import? Pwn Tools, except it's only called Pwn. Okay? So you must have noticed that when you import something, it has functions, okay? So even though I'm calling classes and object-oriented programming boring, that's what they're using pretty much. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jay. I'm wrong? Modules, but they code it the same way, kind of. They don't use classes? Must have. Yeah. Okay. But they have functions. They have functions inside those modules. Is that correct? Better worded? Okay. That's why I'm asking you to correct me. What? Did it not work? Okay, you need to restart it. Restart your IDE. Okay, after you install it, make sure you restart your IDE because it just doesn't notice it yet. And then it'll notice it after. You'll see it. Yeah. Yeah, I did that. It's not that big of a deal. Did you restart your IDE after install? Did you restart your IDE? Yeah. Just restart your IDE because it doesn't recognize it after you did the installation process. Did you do add environment variables? Yeah, look, I'll show you that one more time. So once, open up the installer again, just click modify. And then make sure pip is checked. And then the next thing, when you click next, just one more thing. Riley, make sure you check add Python to environment variables. And then hit install. It's not going to change anything for me. And then restart your IDE and you'll be good to go. Working? Cool. All right. So at this point, you must have noticed we had, like, for example, in the OS library, which has a function name called system, right? Or popin. Both those functions do different things. One of them just prints it straight on your screen. The other one creates a reference point that you can read, okay? Pwn Tools has the same thing. It actually has a lot of functions. If we do pwn dot, you'll see, let's say we type R. You'll see that it has, is that part of it? No. Those are part of Pwn? Yeah, they're part of it. I thought randint was part of, actually, what am I saying? I was saying this earlier. Pwn Tools takes over all your tools that you need. Any library, like the random library, you don't need that. Just use Pwn. Like, for example, you can do randint, which will give you a random integer. Otherwise, what you can do is import random and do like random.randint. It's stupid if you didn't know Pwn Tools exists. And then what we're going to be looking at today is the remote function, which lets us connect to stuff, okay? But what do we connect to? Well, Pico CTF has a lot of challenges that have netcat ports that we can connect to, okay? That have challenges. So before that, let me just quickly finish what I was trying to say. So you have functions, and the way you access those functions is by module name, dot, and then function name, okay? Like remote. And then you have like P32. which is not showing up because that's why it is what it is. P64, etc. Okay. But let's say I only need to use remote, right? I don't want to import the entire library. What I can do is I can identify which function I want to import exclusively. So I can say from pwn, I want to import remote. And what this lets me do is use less memory, less space, less storage in RAM.
It just cleans up your like global variable space.
Yeah.
It
Less
still
space.
runs the entire module, so it doesn't say.
Yeah, it still has to look for remote anyways inside of it, but it doesn't, it's faster. A little bit. I'll prove you wrong. I'll prove you wrong.
It still runs everything.
So with this way, it's nice and clean. You know what remote is. And what the other thing lets you do is you don't have to type pwn.remote anymore. You can just type remote, because now it's identified as what it is, okay? That's the other nice part about it. But if you're a type of person that forgets what the hell remote is, or if you're in a function called remote and you're using pwn tools that's also called remote, you should probably keep it as just import pwn, so you can do pwn.remote. You can also change what it's called. So it's called remote, and I want to call it as Brandon. So now Brandon is my new remote function. And now I can call Brandon, and he is remote. Yeah.
Can you have two import statements, like so you do import pawn and then you do from pawn import remote as Brandon?
Yeah. Granted, that is useless, but yes.
Well, it's so you can alias some of the functions.
Sure. You can do this. Import remote, or let's say from pawn import remote. Let's do remote randint, and then you can do this one as Brandon, and then randint as Ethan. And now I have those functions in one line. Make sense? So I can still do that in one line. You can just put commas. Okay, let's keep going. I'm gonna not do this though. My bad, Brandon. So let's open up Pico real quick. Pico CTF. Yeah, can someone check chat? I don't have access to chat, so I can't really. That is not my login. I don't know if people are asking questions. I know people, hey Grant, if you're still here, man, we miss you. Come back to the club, bro. We get it. It's a lot easier to watch from Twitch. You'll follow along, you get to rewatch it, et cetera, man. But it's nice having your face here, bro. So make sure you pull up next time. So let's go to practice. We're gonna go to general skills, and we're gonna do, I think it's called obedient cat. Or no, sorry, not obedient cat. Nice netcat. There you go. So we're gonna be doing nice netcat. And if you remember, a nice netcat gave us a few things. It gave us the literal command that that you should run. So let's do that. Always solve the challenges manually. Who remembers how this one works? I don't know if I have netcat. I think I do. I don't. How do I want to do this? How do I want to do this? How do I want to do this? I think I can do the web shell. Yeah. Okay. So cool. I'm in. All right. I don't know how much zoom I can do. Okay, that's a lot of zoom. All right, can I paste? No paste. All right, netcat. What's the link? Can someone tell me? And then it's going to be a different port for me. Uh, 21135. Okay. Holy relax. Okay. 21135. And we enter. We got a bunch of numbers. Do we want to do this one first? I don't want to do this one first. There's one that's a little bit easier. A lot easier. It just prints the flag straight up. Is this the one I wanted to do? Which one is the one that prints it straight up on the screen? What is this? Pop out. Okay, that's fine. That's better. If you know what it is, let me know. What's a netcat probably? Yeah. Jupyter.challenges.pico. Can I copy and paste another one? 64287. Oh my God. Please let me paste. Control V. Okay. Thanks. What's the port? 64287. 64287. And then when you press enter, you connect, and it says you're on your way to becoming the Netcat master, and it gives you the flag. Okay? And the reason I'm doing this one is to demonstrate remote, and then we'll go do the harder one that requires a little bit more understanding of Netcat. But we have this one, so it's very simple. We can do it manually, obviously. It's very easy to do manually. But let's code it, just for practice. Okay? Seems redundant to do, but you start with the really easy stuff first, and then you build your way out to the harder stuff. You can't just jump straight into the hard stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the URL and port. You guys should do the same, and go to your IDE. And at this point, I'm going to create two variables. I'm going to call one URL and the other one port. I'm going to paste, what is it, 64827. I'm going to paste the two, 64827. I'm going to put this one in quotes, the other one in no quotes. What's a netcat? Yeah, what's a netcat is the challenge on Pico CTF. Okay? So, everyone following? You got your website and your port. Honestly, I think you can just use mine, but you want to submit the flag, so just use your stuff. You want to create the variable URL. You want to put it in quotes, because obviously Jupyter.challenge.picoctf is not an integer or a float, so you need to put it in quotes. It's a string, right? And then you want to do port, and port happened to be an integer, so let's leave it at that, okay? Don't put that in quotes. Then we want to use our handy little module called remote, and we want to assign that to a variable. The reason we do that is because we want this variable to be our thing that we can interact with. Okay, I'll explain that once it'll make a little more sense. So you want to do URL comma port. We could have just put the URL in there manually and the port in there manually, but it's nice to define things. That way, it's easier to just type URL later on over and over again rather than type port or the entire thing. Okay. I don't know if you guys are following. Is everyone following along? Everyone good? Okay. So at this point, if we did r dot, you'll see we have a few things. It doesn't show everything. It does show everything if you scroll down. There's a lot of stuff, not a few things. Okay, a lot more than a few. What this does essentially is now r is going to connect to the URL and port, okay? And then we want to print out this information, okay? But we want to tell R to actually receive this information. So how do we receive it? Receive line. We could do line, but there's multiple lines. So we should do receive all, okay? So I'm going to do r.receive all, except like earlier, this doesn't do anything because we're not printing it. So it won't. It does something, and it's not going to show us what it did. So let's print out what it did. So to go over our code, we have we're importing the remote function from Pwn. We're letting it connect to the URL and port, and then we're printing out the output. Okay. And as long as we did everything correctly, this should just print out the output. Could not connect to 64827. I probably put my port wrong then. 64287. Oops. 64287. Okay. So if you look at all that, you see we do get the stuff. It's all on one line, except it's not really all on one line. Why is that? Anyone know?
Because it's the new line character.
Yeah, there's a new line character. The reason we see it as a new line character is because of how things transfer over Netcat. It's called bytes. It's sending in bytes. It's not sending in ASCII characters. It's sending in bytes represented as ASCII characters for us, okay? And the reason we know that is because Python does this nice little thing that defines that this is a byte, and it puts a B behind the string. And this means that this is a byte, okay, and not a string. So this /n for netcat will get translated as the byte /n and not the ASCII character / and then n. Does that make sense?
That's a backslash.
Backslash, sorry, backslash and then n.
So could we create a regex expression to look for?
Exactly, that's exactly what we're going to do, except we know the flag format. So instead of, we look for the format, exactly. But we also see all this other garbage output. It's not garbage, it's useful when you're debugging, but we don't want to see it anymore. And Jay, remind me, how is it? Is it pwn.debug equals error? Pwn context. Pwn, whoa.
So import context. No, just do import remote, comma, context. And then you say
Context.log underscore level. And then we're going to do error. Error. Oh my God. Stop. Okay. The reason we do error is because we want it to tell us only when things are going wrong. I don't want to see all of this stuff when it's going well. All these pluses and this is it connecting and stuff.
show debug so that
Sure.
see like what's going on under the hood.
So debug will let you see literally everything. I don't think there's levels to debug. Is there levels to debug? Yeah.
Anything that could be logged,
They will log on the screen, that is. So let's go up. Sorry, right here. Where's my, okay, there you go. So it's going to show you the beginning where it opens up the connection, and then it's going to tell you how many bytes it received, and then it's going to say, okay, I'm receiving the rest of the bytes because we did receive all, and then it's going to show you the /n, and then it's going to show you the flag, and then it's going to show you that it finished receiving everything and it's done, okay? And now let's replace that to error. And when we run that, we should only see the output, which is what we want, okay? Now granted, if you are doing regex, which we're going to get to in a second, a very simple, easy regex to understand, that is, it won't be searching through all of this stuff if that existed, okay? It'll only be searching through the output, because what is the output assigned to? What variable? R. Well, yeah. R is the output though. When we do receive all, R has it for a second in memory. Okay, let's assign it to a variable so we can make Jay happy. So if I do output equals R dot receive all, so now output has only the bytes that we received. So even if we didn't put error and we put debug, if we were trying to like grep, for example, I'm going to use grep as an, I'm not going to tell you guys regex. We're going to get to regex in a second. It'll ignore all of this. This stuff doesn't matter to it. It is only going to regex this statement down here, regardless of how much debugging you're doing, okay? So that is something to look for. So if you're seeing an error and it's just not telling you what's happening, change that context level to debug, and it'll explain to you a little bit more about what is really happening, and maybe you'll be able to figure it out. A lot of times what I like doing whenever I'm getting errors in Python is literally copy that error and paste it in Google. And someone had that problem before you, and someone else told them how to fix it 100% of the time. You are not the first person writing code in Python. Okay. So now we have this output, but we only want the Pico CTF flag. How do we do that? Regular expression, okay? Sure. Okay. Yep, dot decode. So now it's a string. You want me to print it? So now it wouldn't have the B anymore. It'll actually print it out how it should be printed. And then because in this scenario, Pico CTF is on the second line, he's saying we should just print the second line. instead of printing all of it or regexing it. The reason I'm going to go through the regex method is because the regex method will work for any time you're doing a search, because the way Pico CTF does their flags. It'll always be, except very certain scenarios where they tell you it's not, Pico CTF, curly brackets with a flag inside. So what we need to search for is Pico CTF with curly brackets and anything in between. Does that make sense? So we're going to do that. So let's add the regex module, which is called RE, which means regex, okay? Which stands for regular expression, okay? So in this, we're going to take this output file. We're going to do flag. We're going to create a file called, or a variable called flag. And we're going to do re.findAll. I'll wait for you guys. Jay, what does the R just interprets regular expression better? Or kind of like / ends and whatever?
Yeah,
Backslashes, sorry. I don't know why I'm mixing up my slashes today. It's not Monster. You gotta stop drinking Monster. I did for a week. Taking a break, yeah. That's what I meant by that. Okay, so we're gonna use the findAll function in the regex, in the RE library. The reason we're doing that is because we want to find all instances of a flag. I mean, it's the easiest way to do it. I could do find line or find word or whatever. I don't know what they're called exactly. Find all is easy. We're going to create some quotes. I'm going to do R in the front, and this just lets you do better. This just lets you do better backslashes, etc. So if I'm looking for / n, it'll understand that. Okay. So in this scenario, we're looking for Pico CTF with curly brackets, right? Except we're looking for anything in between that. Okay. So how do you find anything in between that? Dot asterisk. This means anything in between the things that you're surrounding with it. So dot is this area, so the curly brackets, right, Jay? Explain it, but I don't know how to explain regex. I barely understand it myself. I just know how. I just write it, and it works.
So dot is what's called like a wild card, I guess, and dot will stand for literally any character.
Anything.
And then the asterisk means it can be 0 or more of that.
Yep.
Until it hits the next part of the regex, which is the end bracket. And then if you do dot star question mark, it means it'll try to match as few as possible.
Yeah. So it'll stop at the first curly brace.
Not the end of it.
Like yeah, the end of it.
So if there are like 3 curly braces after it, and you don't have the question mark, it'll match all of the curly braces.
So let's show you what that. Let me show you what that looks like. So a good website to go to is Regex 101. So let's do that real quick. So this is a website that you should actually very often go to, because let's say we have an output called Pico CTF flag _123 flag, okay? And then I have another instance of this with stuff inside here, and then this with more stuff inside here, okay? So now we do our regex, Pico CTF, dot star this, and now you see it's matching everything because it'll look for the curly brace, the end of the curly brace, no matter what. But if we add the question mark, it'll stop at the first instance of that curly brace. Does that make sense? If we remove the star, it doesn't match anything because we're not telling it if we want to do letters or numbers or whatever.
You're just saying there could be a character in there, but
Figure it out, pretty much. But this is, adding the star lets you do everything. The dot just means anything in there. So question mark, and now you have that flag. A lot of times, if you actually, let's do this real quick. Let's go to Try Hack Me. That's a good website. And I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna copy their code. I'm gonna paste it in here, okay? And somewhere in here, I wanna do, see they have a lot of curly braces. Do they have a lot of curly braces? They have a lot of parentheses. They have curly braces and brackets. Somewhere in here, I'm just gonna type Pico CTF with our flag, okay? Flag _123 flag, capital letters, okay? And you'll see that this will work regardless because of the way it works. Pico CTF, I want to make sure it's very case sensitive. pico CTF dot star question mark, and it'll find it even in this huge line of code. And that's why regex is so useful. If you tell an employer or an interviewer that you know how to do regex, especially if you're about to work in a seam, they will hire you. The seams, you have to look at a lot more information than this, and you literally have to do regex 24/7 because you are parsing through millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of logs, and you can't just do like, I'm looking for the word short. Oh shoot, there's 3 matches, and imagine if there's millions of them. Or I'm looking for the word header, especially in HTTP requests. Exactly. And that's where regex comes in handy. So I'm not gonna sell myself as a master of regex. I always come to this website if I need to figure something out. And what's nice about this website is the bottom right, you have the quick reference. If I want to do common tokens, these are things that people use. You can see I can do A to Z lowercase, A to Z uppercase, like that in brackets. A bracket B tells you it's gonna match either A or B. And you can click on it and it'll tell you more information, and then like there's other things like quantifiers and group constructs, and we'll talk about groups later. But I just want to show you guys a super simple regex that will find pico CTF and match it. Except what this does with find all is it creates a list, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So if I print flag now, so real quick to kind of recap what we did. Same thing, error. We're connecting, we're receiving everything, and do we need it? Yeah, it doesn't go through bytes. You think it does?
No, like I think you have to decode.
Yeah, it doesn't go through bytes. That's what I was saying. RE can't understand bytes. You have to decode the output, okay? So when you netcat stuff, make sure you're doing the decode. So you change it into ASCII. And then from there, I can do the find all, this regex on the output variable, which should have like the first line and the pico CTF flag. And at this point, hopefully, what it does is it'll print the flag. Except it prints it in a list. You see that? It's a list, and the reason it's a list is there's square brackets around it, and that's what we don't want. So what we can do is we can do this nice little thing that every program language has called, such than IN, indexing. So I can index, I say I only want to identify this flag variable as the first occurrence, assuming that there's more than one. 0 means the first one occurrence of that list. So the first thing of that list, make that the flag. And then when we do that again, it should just print the flag in clear text. Make sense? Does that make sense, the list part? Because there's lists, assuming that it matches more than one, likely it doesn't. So there's only one item, therefore we want the first item. So you have here. That is pretty much it. So you've dabbled with Python, now you know how to use Pwn Tools, and if you want to do the challenge that we saw a second ago with nice netcat right here, and that one gives you a bunch of, numbers to work with. And what were they? Decimal numbers, right? Python has this really cool thing that translates decimal numbers into letters. So let's quickly show you guys how to do that. And the assignment for Friday, for the people that come on Friday, and Wednesday for the others, is to create a script that will print the flag out for the other one. And I'll give you guys the hint, I guess. If I have x equals, what's an ASCII letter or the decimal for A? 97, there you go. And if I do print character of x, there you go. You'll see it translates the decimal value into A. So that's CHR, character. So it'll translate even if it was hex or whatever it was, right? Or does it have to be decimal?
Well, they receive it as a string, so they probably have to cast it to an integer.
No, I mean, does it translate also decimals? I mean, hex values, or does it have to be a decimal value?
You pass in like just straight up 0x, like.
0x, whatever A is.
Well, yeah, because it's just a number.
The character? Yeah, that makes sense. Because it'll just figure it out, yeah.
As long as you pass an integer in there, it'll.
Yeah, so as long as you're not adding a string in there, which you might, because whenever you receive, because when you receive all the data from the Pwn Tools, what is it going to give you? It's going to give you bytes for the nice netcat, right? It's going to give you a bunch of bytes that you need to decode into a string. And then from a string, you need to change it into an int. And we talked about how to do that. You just do, let's say this is a string, 97. I just have to do int around it. And yeah, typecast it. And then now it's an int even though there's quotes around it. Now 97 is an int. And then if I do print character x, it won't yell at me. But if I don't do that, it'll be like, hey, this is a string. Okay? So you're going to receive stuff as bytes? Yeah.
So then,
No, go ahead.
you go first. I will ask, how do you automate turning the flag in?
You could do that.
Because, I mean, if you want the complex answer, Pico CTF has an API. You can just
Yeah. You definitely can do that. We can probably get into it more for the advanced people on Friday. We'll look into how to do that. It's API stuff is further. CTF Katana does do that. For people that don't know what CTF Katana is, if you know John Hammond on YouTube, if you're a nerd and you don't spend your time, or you spend a lot of your time on your computer watching YouTubers do CTF instead of just doing it yourself, he made a really, really big tool called CTF Katana that aims to solve CTF's challenges for you. And then he also made a write-up called CTF Katana. I don't know why he just didn't choose different names for them. That helps you do CTFs. So like if you're stuck on like a steganography challenge, you go to CTF Katana, it's on GitHub, and then you Control F or click on the steganography section and table of contents, and it'll give you like a million tools that you could use to try to solve that challenge. So it's pretty nice. Or you can just use this tool that automatically exploits it, but that's not fun. Yeah, just throw this on there. No, you could. I honestly don't care. You guys earned it. You guys sat here and learned how to do it. So definitely start doing that. If you guys do if you guys do finish the script for Nice Netcat, you can put that on your GitHub. You automated something, and that is something to talk about in an interview. I'm serious, because you actually have to connect. You have to translate the bytes into string, or just bytes to string to int, and then from int you take it into character, and then you finally have them, and then you just add them all up together, and you get the flag. I just gave you the pseudocode for the application, or for the script. Now you just got to do it by Friday. All right, you got me on Wednesday. All right, we're done. Oh, next week we're doing red teaming. Peace.